Hey everyone, it's Year Peacekeeper coming at you with the next and final video in our How to Play series on the Japanese destroyer line. This is the Tier 10 Shimakaze or Island Wind. Shimakaze was a one-off destroyer built for the Japanese Navy during World War II. She consisted of two departures from other Japanese destroyers that are pretty major departures, actually. First, she featured a experimental high-pressure, high-temperature steam turbine setup that allowed her a 39 knot top speed in normal conditions, or a 40.9 knot top speed under idealized conditions during sea trials. Second, she is the only Japanese destroyer to carry 15 torpedoes in 3 quintuple launchers. No other Japanese destroyer carried that many torpedoes. Her engines were prototyped and tested on the Kagero-class destroyer Akatsuki, but the engines used in the construction of Shimakaze were unique enough not to turn Shimakaze into a full-fledged class of her own. They were just too unique and too difficult to manufacture for the Japanese at the time, and as a result, Shimakaze became a one-off destroyer. As I said before, during sea trials in 1943, she achieved a top speed of 40.9 knots. Again, that's under idealized conditions, calm water, low load, the whole 9 yards. Her actual official and design top speed was 39 knots. Aside from having 15 torpedoes, the rest of the armament was pretty much standard affair for Japanese destroyers, which included the typical depth charge throwers mounted in the back, the typical anti-aircraft suite, and of course the 5-inch or 127mm 50 caliber Type 3 dual-purpose guns mounted in 1 pair up front and 2 pairs in the back in super firing pairs. She did receive a refit in 1944 that removed one of the 5-inch gun turrets for more anti-aircraft, and if I had to take a wild guess, my guess is it's this middle one, simply because it's up higher and that tends to make sea-keeping abilities a little worse when you have that much weight mounted up top. Shimakaze had a really short service life. She was commissioned in May of 1943, and she was present at the Battle of the Philippine Sea, or the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, as well as the Battle of Leyte Gulf, although at Leyte, she really did not do anything in combat. She basically was on scene to rescue survivors from Musashi after Musashi was sunk. On November 11th, 1944, she was sunk at the Battle of Ormoc Bay by aircraft from Task Force 38's aircraft carriers. In terms of her in-game gameplay, Shimakaze is by far one of the most polarizing destroyers in the game. You either love her or you hate her. I have yet to meet somebody who is kind of about her. I'm sure you guys will let me know down in the comments if you are kind of in between on her. Usually, the reasons why people hate her is because she has inadequate speed, which I don't know how. She has a 39 knot top speed, 41 with the speed flag plus speed boost, so she's really quite a fast destroyer, especially when you compare it to Gearing's like 36 knots. Anyway, either it's inadequate speed, poor torpedo detection range, short torpedo range, poor anti-aircraft, it's a Japanese destroyer, poor gunplay, or poor turret traverse. Those seem to be the most common complaints about Shimakaze. However, I have to disagree with a lot of these points, simply because while they aren't the best for a destroyer, they are useful in a different playstyle than every other destroyer. You don't play Shimakaze like you play any other destroyer in-game. In fact, her gameplay best resembles Akatsuki, the Tier 7 destroyer, and the reasons why should be pretty obvious. You've got the 3 launchers, granted they're triple launchers, so there's only 9 torpedoes on Akatsuki, but you have those 3 launchers, you have the 3 turrets with 2 guns in each, so you got 6 total guns, and you have relatively comparable stealth, you have relatively comparable maneuverability. Actually, Akatsuki's a little bit better on the maneuverability side, but overall the ship, they perform pretty close to each other. You're basically giving up 7 torpedoes. No, yeah, wait. Math, apparently I can't math. You're giving up 6 torpedoes. that's really the best analog. So if you're really struggling with Shimakaze's playstyle, go down and play Akatsuki. That's a good ship to practice with. It certainly won't hurt your bank account nearly as much as trying to play Shimakaze. But ultimately, the main complaints that people have with Shimakaze, I personally disagree with. Yes, her guns are slow to traverse, and yes, they have a low rate of fire, but they are far from useless. As I've said throughout this entire Japanese Destroyer How to Play series, the guns on Japanese Destroyer serve an entirely different purpose than on any other destroyer. You use them to bait out damage control parties before your torpedoes hit, or you burn ships after they hit. And they do a lot of damage to other destroyers. They have flat arcs. They are accurate. All of those things come together. Oh, and by the way, they have a pretty good fire chance too for a 5-inch gun. All of those things come together to be very useful, but they don't play like a Gearing's guns play. They don't play like a Khabarovsk's guns play. They are exceptionally useful in the 8 to your maximum range. In my case, it's 13.6 kilometers with advanced fire training on the captain. And the reason why they're useful is because you can bait out those damage control parties or burn ships after they've been hit by torpedoes. You can even use the guns to steer ships into your torpedoes. It just kind of depends on how much attention is being paid to you when you start shooting. Now, I know there's a whole bunch of you that are about to hit the dislike button, but hear me out. Shimakaze's torpedoes don't have poor detection range. Yes, it is longer than everyone else. The problem with this argument always comes down to the fact that Shimakaze has 15 torpedoes. If you don't understand the reasons why the detection range on the torpedoes are as high as they are, it's because the torpedoes do a boatload of damage. The 12K torpedoes do 24,000 damage a hit. This is almost a full 6,000 damage more than Gearing, but she only loses 0.3 kilometers of detection range to get it, and a little bit of speed. Not a whole lot of speed, just a little bit. And yes, Gearing's torpedoes have more range, but quite honestly, I run torpedo acceleration on my Gearing captain. I don't personally find 16.5K torpedoes to be all that useful. I rarely, if ever, use those torpedoes to launch at that range. But when you look at the stats, and this is the part that was interesting to me, when you look at the stats in an average game, you're going to hit with just as many torpedoes as in Shimakaze as you would in Gearing, because you're literally doing, and I hate this phrase, but you're literally launching skill walls. You're launching walls of torpedoes, and if you put them right with those 3 launchers, you can make it so you're always going to hit with at least one, and you're always going to do more damage when that one torpedo hits than Gearing is going to do when it gets 1 torpedo hits. But wait, Gearing gets an extra torpedo hit. No, actually, statistically, they don't. In fact, the hit rates, 6 and 8% for Shimakaze and Gearing, respectively, it ends up being the same number of torpedoes per salvo launched. 1. Yep, 1. That's how many torpedoes you're expected to hit every time you launch a torpedo, a group of torpedoes with Shimakaze or Gearing. And so you will always do more damage with your torpedoes. There are ways, and I'm working on the video, so bear with me, to launch torpedoes so that you don't miss, or so that your chances of missing are really low. And it just requires a lot of situational awareness to what's going on in the game. And that's why I said, if you're struggling to hit with torpedoes with Shimakaze, you can go all the way down to Minakaze to get the 3 torpedo launcher set up. But Akatsuki is by far the best analog to Shimakaze's gameplay. With the gunplay, with the torpedo play, with the speed, maneuverability, the whole 9 yards. And so you can practice, and you should practice. And yes, it should be difficult, because honestly, there are those of us who remember the heyday of Shimakaze. Those 20K torps would show up like 1.2 kilometers off the side of your ship, and you would get deleted instantly. There was no time to react. Those days do not need to come back. Overall, I find Shimakaze to be one of the most enjoyable destroyers in the game to play. I love her more than just about any other destroyer in the game, with the exception of Akatsuki, which is by far my favorite destroyer in this game. And she's really only bested in her outright torpedo capability by Shiratsuyu, and Shiratsuyu's torpedoes only become comparable with the torpedo reload booster active when you have that up. And so it's not really a fair comparison. Especially since you give up so much more on Shiratsuyu than you would on Shimakaze. You always have 15 torpedoes available on Shimakaze. You always have 6 guns to use. They have pretty good arcs, and you are fast, things that Shiratsuyu is not. Anyway, I personally find Shimakaze to be best played on an enemy flank or in a position to punish people who are camping in their smoke. The other good time to use it, use Shimakaze's torpedoes, are on maps that are extremely channelized, maps that have basically caps in a channel with very little room to maneuver. Those maps they're not that common, but you'd be surprised at how easy it is to trap ships in these little channels and really punish them with Shimakaze's torpedoes. Also, I don't know. There's a lot of people that dislike playing the ship, so I'm not going to rail on that. We'll talk more in the battle video. Let's go over the stats. She has 17,900 hit points, next to no armor. Her main battery consists of the 6 5-inch or 127mm 50 caliber 3rd year type Mod D dual-purpose guns. They are mounted in a single dual turret up front and 2 dual turrets out back in a super firing pair, meaning that one pair can fire over the other. They have a 13.6 kilometer range, a 5.4 second reload time. That's going to be with basic firing training. The range is with advanced firing training. The 180 degree turn time is 22.8 seconds. That is without expert marksman. So not really super fast turret traverse. Her fire chance is going to be 7%, although you'll see 8% here because I'm running both the flags on the captain. The torpedoes, they consist of 3 quintuple torpedo launchers. They are mounted amidships. They have pretty good firing arcs. You have 3 options for torpedoes. The Type 93s are the stock torpedoes, and they are awful. The first thing you should do with this ship is get rid of those torpedoes. If you have the free XP to burn it. These torpedoes are awful. Yes, they have a 20 kilometer max range. Yes, they move 62 knots and still do 21,000 damage. However, they have a 2.5 kilometer detection range. That means they get spotted basically from space. And this is the torpedo setup that is by far the most frustrating to use. The most effective way to use these 20k torps is in denying areas of travel from enemy ships, whether that's launching them down a channel, whether that is launching them at waves of ships that are coming towards you, like for instance on Two Brothers, being able to put those kind of where most of the ships congregate. That can be kind of useful. I tend to find myself hitting with these more often on ships that I wasn't aiming at than on ships I was aiming at, because they go forever and people just don't pay attention when they're in the way back. I don't run these torpedoes. I don't recommend running these torpedoes. They are next to useless. The setup that I use are the Type 93 Mod 3s. These have a 12k range, 67 knots, 23,767 damage. Basically 24,000 damage. And you really only slow down your reload by a small amount, just 2.5 seconds. For that, your detection range drops from 2.5 kilometers to 1.7 kilometers, which is a far sight better and much easier to get torpedo hits with than those 20k torps are. And they move relatively fast. And if you really wanted to, you could run torpedo acceleration on your captain to get them down. I think it drops it to like 9.6 or 9.8 kilometers and bumps that speed up to 72 knots. There is probably some merit to that gameplay style. I personally don't run it. I find the 12k torps more than acceptable in their current configuration. I don't struggle to get hits with them. The last option is the Type F3s. These are going to be the 8 kilometer torpedoes. They move at 76 knots. They do 21,367 damage, and they do reload faster. They have a detection range of 1.8 kilometers, which is more than offset by the fact that they move blindingly fast. However, Shimakaze, unlike Yugumo, doesn't really have the detection range to utilize these effectively. That basically a 0.5 kilometer of detection range difference is really rough on Shimakaze at tier 10. There are a number of people that will use the F3s with great success. I am not one of them. Like I said, I run the Type 93 Mod 3s because they are far more versatile. and I don't find myself nearly as constrained as I do with the F3s. So I don't really recommend the F3s, but there are people out there that do run them. In terms of anti-aircraft defense, it's a Japanese destroyer. It doesn't really have a whole lot, but it has some. 14 single, the Type 20, the 25mm Type 96s. Then there is one dual 25mm and two triple 25mm. And then, of course, the main armament, those 5-inch or 127mm 50 caliber 3rd-year Type Mod D dual-purpose guns also count. And they do go out to 6K with advanced firing training and do 36 DPS. Woo! Maximum speed in Shimakaze without the speed flag is 39 knots. With the speed flag is 41 knots. Her turning radius is 690 meters, which is really quite wide for a destroyer, but it is still less than Khabarovsk. Her rudder shift time is 3 seconds, and that is going to be without any rudder shift modules at all. Her concealment range is 5.9 kilometers by sea and 3.4 kilometers by air. Let's talk about those upgrades. Main Armaments Mod 1 is pretty obvious. There's really not anything else on this list that I would recommend. This is just going to make it so that your main gun and torpedo tubes, they live longer, they have a lower chance of getting incapacitated, and they have a reduction in their repair time if they do get incapacitated. In the second slot, Aiming Systems Mod 1 is my choice. That's going to speed up your torpedo tube traverse. It is also going to decrease the dispersion of your main battery by 7%. There are those that are going to say Main Battery Mod 2, it's totally worth it. Personally, I don't find the reduction in reload time to be worth it. Some will say that basic firing training will offset that. The ultimate in gun DPS, if you really want to get that way, certainly is not with Main Battery Mod 2 because of the reduction in reload time. In the third slot, I run Torpedo Tubes Mod 3, and really at this point, this is the only mod that I really consider to be viable. This modification is going to reduce the time it takes to reload your torpedoes by 15%, but it is going to increase the chance of them getting incapacitated by 50%. That torpedo reload reduction is absolutely critical to doing damage with torpedoes. I don't really see Main Battery Mod 3, which is a reduction in the reload time for a penalty in turret traverse. I don't see that as being that useful. Certainly adding more range to 13.6 kilometers isn't useful. I suppose if you were running different upgrades on your captain, you weren't running advanced firing training, that might become useful. I don't run it because I run AFT on my captain, and this ship has absolutely terrible AA. It's a Japanese destroyer, it doesn't have defensive fire, and thus AA spec really isn't all that useful, so I don't recommend the AA Guns Mod 3. In the fourth slot, Propulsion Systems Mod 1 is my recommendation for the reduction in your chances of your engine being incapacitated, as well as reducing the time it takes to repair them. Some people will run Steering Gears Mod 1, which is basically the same as Propulsion Mod 1, but for your steering gears. And I will just point out that if you're running Last Stand on your captain, losing your steering and having it jump up to 6 or whatever seconds it is far less damaging than losing your engine and crawling along at 15 knots. At Tier 10, 15 knots is a guaranteed death sentence. So reducing the chances of my engines getting incapacitated is key over the steering gears. I can deal with a very long rudder shift time. It is impossible to deal with the engines being knocked out and crawling along at next to no speed with Last Stand. In the fifth slot, I take Propulsion Systems Mod 2, which is going to reduce the time it takes for your engines to reach, quote, full power by 50%, and it increases engine power when the ship starts moving. Basically, this is going to be from that negative 6 knot to 6 knot range. It allows you to get up to those speeds much, much quicker. That is extremely useful for using smoke offensively. It allows you to get in and out of smoke, move in your smoke, especially get away from torpedoes that will most likely be coming into your smoke. I also don't think Steering Gears Mod 2 is really all that applicable here. Her rudder shift time by default is 3 seconds, and reducing that by 20% isn't going to make a noticeable difference, but you will definitely notice Propulsion Systems Mod 2. Damage Control Systems Mod 2 is useless on a destroyer. If you're on fire or flooding, chances are you're probably dead anyway. In the last slot, Concealment Systems Mod 1 is by far the one to choose. That is going to drop the detection range by 10% and increase the dispersion of shells fired at you by 5%. And that is definitely more useful than reducing the rudder shift time by 40% or increasing how far you can spot torpedoes or other ships. Yeah, concealment for destroyers, it's a gimme. Anyway, let's dive on into that battle video, because I'm sure you're sick of hearing me talk and want to see the battle video. Alright, so this battle is going to be a Tier 10 battle. Obviously, we're in Shimakaze, which is a Tier 10 destroyer. There are no aircraft carriers. There are 4 battleships per side, and 5 cruisers on the enemy team, and 3 destroyers on the enemy team. The map is Trap. This is a absolutely terrible map. It is a difficult map to do well in Shimakaze, but this map, or this battle, correction, actually ends up being very good. And one of the things that I really want to point out is Tier 10 destroyer capping with Shimakaze. This map, B, is a particularly hotly contested map capture point, and the best way to cap this is the best way to cap it with any Japanese destroyer. I'm going to poke my head just inside. I'm going to set myself up so that if I get radared or if I get detected by another destroyer, I can just hit the gas and dive out of that cap as soon as possible. You don't want to linger around too much inside of a cap without a lot of support. If you've got support, fantastic. That can definitely make the difference. I mean, these guns do hit hard against destroyers. You'll frequently see like 2.5, 3K, 4K. I've seen as much as 4K with a lot of good hits. That can be very useful. Just understand that without support, chances are at close ranges you're going to lose to another destroyer in a gunfight, because Japanese destroyers are not intended to be played as knife-fighting anti-destroyer ships. That's the role of the US destroyers, and to a limited extent, the German destroyers. The cap here, you will see I'm going to just barely duck in, and then I'm going to slow down, and we're going to stay on this far side over here until we can figure out kind of the flow of the battle. So we are now in the cap, in Cap B. I've got next to no support. I got a Fletcher that's coming my way. I've got, 2 division mates that are also in the area. However, support against the DD at this point is very limited. Yes, there's a Baltimore on my team. He is in my division. He is far enough away that he probably isn't going to be able to help me right away. And even if he did, it would probably be a death sentence for him. So we are now at 30 seconds to finishing this cap. We are halfway there. You can see I'm backing up. I'm more or less just messing around, trying to wait for something to show up. Okay, so we got an Iowa up north. Nothing really here. Ooh, a smoke cloud. I wonder what could be in a smoke cloud. Oh, a Chapayev. Now, a Chapayev has radar, so what am I prepared for? Radar. My torpedoes aren't up yet. Oh, and they've blocked the cap, so there is now something blocking the cap. We are going... Ooh, look where the smoke cloud's going. We are going to launch torpedoes into this smoke. Now, there is a little tiny island in there in between where I'm launching these, so that's definitely something to be cognizant of. Chapayev pops his radar. I'm going backwards. I'm not panicking. This isn't something to panic about. Don't fire. Don't do anything. And bail on out. You can see this is the reason why I angle myself the way I angle myself. Now, there is I believe it's a Minotaur that's in there. It's a Royal Navy cruiser. And look at literally how little damage I've taken. His radar is over. I didn't panic. I wasn't sitting stationary. I was able to get away. Yes, he's going to get a couple more hits. That was a pretty painful hit. But I'm alive. That's not a big problem. Also, this captain has adrenaline rush. What is a problem, though, is the fact that they are now capping this point. And it was a Benson. I'm glad I got out of there. We missed the Chapayev there with our torpedoes. He is thoroughly distracted by something else at this point, so we could probably begin to engage him, especially since there's nothing else around that can really spot me. Oh, we got a torpedo hit on something. There's 19,000 damage, 1 torpedo hit, and a flood. Chapayev is going behind the island. I'm using those guns to, 1, reset the cap, 2, hopefully start a fire here, And 3, we're just racking up what damage we can. He's broadside. We might as well take some damage. We're getting to defend there. This is by far the easiest way to get high XP in a Japanese destroyer. Find a cap, poke whatever's in the cap, get yourself some defense ribbons. There is a fire, 594 damage of defense ribbon. We're just going to keep plinking. I mean, we've got smoke up. The Chapayev burned his radar. I don't think there's anything else near me that has radar, and even if we do, there's enough ships around me that I can bail on out of there. You can see we're doing about 1,200 damage every time we shoot at him. That's going to add up pretty quickly. We're guaranteed basically a 600 damage. And so, yeah, I mean, look at those pretty tight shot groupings. He finally disappears, and yes, it was a Minotaur that was shooting at me. We got 4 seconds until our torpedoes are up. There is a Domskoy there, so that is something worth worrying about. We are out of his radar range. His radar range, I think, is like 11 even, I think. It might be 11 and a half. It's less than 12, I know that much. I'm really not worried about it either because, look, all their ships are so far away. We are going to set ourselves up, and we are going to push an angle on these ships. There is still smoke there, so something is still sitting in smoke. So we are going to use that to our advantage. So we're going to pop torpedoes down that alley. We're going to pop another set there and another set there. And hopefully in the midst of this, we will continue to get more hits. Now you see there, just popped up on the other side of the island is the Chapayev. And he will see what he's going to do. And again, I will not panic, because it's really not that big of a deal. This is what WASD is. You'll also notice that I haven't done a whole lot of gunplay out in the open, and that's because there's still cruisers around that are fairly effective at shooting at destroyers. Certainly that Chapayev and Domskoy, those are going to be painful if they ever land successful hits. Down goes our Des Moines. We are now down. That was first blood. It took 5 minutes and plus to get into our first kill. You'll also notice that I am pre-turning all of my turrets so that when I start my turnaround... Oh, okay, so Chapayev just popped his radar, and I am detected. Oh, no. Oh, another torpedo hit, 2 torpedo hits, 3 torpedo hits, 4 torpedo hits, and down goes the Ibuki. And we are up to 85,000 damage. This would be a good game on any day of the week. That Chapayev is being annoying with his radar, but once again, not detected. And I haven't used my gun since I popped my smoke. So let's see if we can't dive into this and get a little bit more aggressive. Now the Minotaur, oh, okay, so we are going to engage the Minotaur. He's backing up, he's going forward. We know that we poked him earlier with the torpedo. I'm really not worried about his guns. He's focused on something else at the moment. Plus the Domskoy's focused on something else. There's enough ships around that me getting hit, probably low probability. And what I'm thinking at this point is well, that Chapayev is up there. We need to get him out of the cap in order for us to cap. There is a Benson up there that we need to get rid of. They've still got all of their destroyers. I'm our last destroyer. All of our guys are down at A. We still haven't capped A. All of our guys are up here at B. We haven't capped B. Oh, Benson pops up and he's got no hit points left. Not what I would have done with all the ships that are there. Edinburgh puts him out of his misery. Now we need to get Mr. Chapayev out of this equation. How are we going to get Chapayev out? That is a tough question. This Izumo here, he could possibly push it in there. The Edinburgh, Neptune, and New Orleans could probably do it. Just about any other way to really get around that. Just kind of depends on who wants to be aggressive. Nobody's pushing because right now there are a lot of battleships over here. Torpedoes off to our right. Make sure that we're going to miss those. And because there are battleships over here, you know what time it is? Oh, and there's smoke! Shimakaze is really effective at punishing people for smoke. We can see where this Grosser Kurfürst is going. I have a feeling he's going to try and push up, especially with all these destroyers and the cruisers in cap. So we've just got all of the one corner of that in there that we can pop those at, and then we got this other channel. I think he's going to go forward. Yeah, we'll go ahead and launch him there. And once again, oops, somebody popped their radar. Ooh, that must have been the New Orleans who popped his radar momentarily. Chapayev is there. He is going the other way. I am not concerned. And there goes his radar. I am not concerned about this one bit. Minotaur is focusing on something else. We just turn away from the enemy. We wig-wag, and then we will disappear as soon as the radar is done. What that radar isn't going to show, though, is those torpedoes going through the smoke and finding targets. Mr. Domskoy's back there. Mr. Grosser Kurfürst, Mr. Iowa. There goes one on the Grosser Kurfürst. And it looks like we're going to get 2 or 3 on the Domskoy, maybe even 1 on the Iowa Domskoy. You can see the torpedoes there. There goes 1 right now. And here comes another. Smile for the torpedo. Down he goes. And we are now at 2. So we're going to pop our smoke here, and we are going to go ahead and join in the gunnery on the Grosser Kurfürst. And the reason for this is simple. We are waiting for our torpedoes to come back up. Oop, torpedoes coming in. They disappeared. We are waiting for our torpedoes to come back up, and as a result, we got 40 seconds of doing nothing. We got plenty of spotting from the ships down in the south coming up north. This Grosser Kurfürst needs to get burned down ASAP so that, 1, we don't have the points against us, and 2, because he is just out in the open with little to no support. There's Moon Puma, our resident Russian in STW, coming up and using his Montana to help push in this Grosser Kurfürst's face so that we can move on. And there's a fire from Shimakaze's guns, and we are burning ourselves a Grosser Kurfürst. We are up to 130,000 damage, 8 torpedo hits. And we are just putting round after round into the Grosser Kurfürst, and he is just a burning away. And this is really one of the uses of the guns. You'll notice I've used a lot of offensive smoke. That's going to change here in a minute. And we are going to go into full-on Rambo mode and start gunning down some cruisers. That's going to come a little bit in the future, but I won't spoil as to which cruiser, because it's kind of fun. Anyway, back to gunning down this Grosser Kurfürst. You know, we're contributing to this engagement by continuing to keep our guns in play. And down goes the Grosser Kurfürst to Moon. Now there's their Shimakaze, who is doing, I don't know what he's doing. We've capped B now. The points are in our favor. You can see I am going full on Rambo. We are adding our guns to this fight. Again, Shimakaze's guns are really effective against other destroyers. Just keep wig-wagging. There's 1,200 damage. Oop, underlet him there. Still got a hit on him though. Oop, and down he goes. So we've got Chapayev, Rune, Minotaur. There's a destroyer running around. There's an Iowa running around. Mr. Stealth Build Iowa. Man, our New Orleans got smoked. And speaking of smoke, there's an Ognivoy. So we'll use this smoke momentarily to do some more damage to this Ognivoy. Up to 144,833 damage. Ognivoy moves faster than you think. And is very squirrely. Kind of hard to hit. And, well, we're going to see him go down pretty quick here. At this point, basically, the enemy team couldn't cohese enough, you know, become one cohesive unit enough to actually put up a resistance, and that really kind of comes back to bite them. We got ourselves into a little situation here. We are detected. I'm not really all that worried about it. Again, there's nothing really that can engage me. We got ships on the other side, the island of the northwest, that Ognivoy, well, he's shooting at me. The Chapayev and the Rune are shooting at me. The Chapayev is kind of behind an island at the moment. Not really worried about him. Again, pre-turning our turrets to the other side so that when we get to going, it's not an issue. We're going to burn our last speed boost here to get on out of this situation. You can see Mr. Minotaur pops up. And what do Minotaurs do when they always pop up in front of other ships? They pop, wait for it, smoke. Yeah. Guess what I like? I like it when ships go ahead and pop smoke in front of me. It's like the best thing for Shimakaze. Of course, I probably should have warned the Edinburgh first. Oi, Mr. Edinburgh, go ahead and warn you. And of course, somebody throws in that he's basically dead anyway, which is probably true. I always try and give him the opportunity, because the way he was heading, it was not going to end well. Hopefully he didn't slow down for my torps, and that's the reason why he died. Someone was detecting him, and that really didn't help his situation out any. So we got 15 torpedoes out. We got to make sure we avoid the Minotaur's torpedoes there. They do have 10k range. That Minotaur is still in that smoke. You can see him pop up and shoot. He's shooting at my teammate here. But it's not going to help him any because... donk! Okay, there's one torpedo in the bow. And now we can just go ahead and begin firing at him. But he dies. And now we're on to the Iowa. So we're up to 157,590 damage. 9 torpedo hits. The Iowa is moving, if I remember correctly, in reverse. He is current... Ooh, Ognivoy is shooting at me again. Getting close. Yeah, he hit me. What a jerk. The Iowa here is backing up. At least initially, our Iowa is going for the ram, which is an interesting tactic. So we will help our Iowa out the best that we can, in the hopes that maybe we can get our Iowa to survive this engagement, at least long enough to poke the rune. Maybe ruin his day. Continuing to engage the Iowa, and my goal here is simply to get around this side. The Iowa's now burning again, so we've once again started yet another fire. My goal here is to try and head off this rune to keep him from coming around. If our Iowa dies, I don't want him coming around. We got the Ognivoy there as well. We need to definitely pay attention to him. Oh, Iowas are getting close. Getting close. Get as much damage in as we can. Maybe we'll get lucky and get a detonation. Yeah, unlikely with a 5-inch shell. Actually, probably impossible with a 5-inch shell. Our Iowa is going in. Is he going to get it? Is he going to? Yes. Okay, so he got him. So now this Ognivoy is up here. This rune is up here. The Chapayev is out of vision over in C, but we can see where he's going. Chances are this Ognivoy is coming my way. It's definitely something to be prepared for in advance. You can see that on the minimap, and minimap awareness in Shimakaze is crucial. There's a lot of people that run RPF. That's certainly your prerogative. I don't. I just don't feel it's necessary. I have enough map situational awareness and enough time in the game to know where ships are going to show up. So for me, it's not nearly as big of an issue to have it. But one thing is certain, I know the Ognivoy, he's going to end up, the way I'm going to end up aiming myself, he's going to end up on my right side. So we're going to keep our guns pointed right. This rune is going that... Oh, so there's the Ognivoy. He popped up real quick, and you can see on the minimap where he's going to be. Convenient that he's going to be in the exact place that this rune is going to be when my torpedoes get there. Launch 2 sets, wait with the third, launch the third set just a little bit later. Ognivoy is not spotted yet, but... Oh, we've been spotted. Salvo out, and down he goes. Oh, you gotta love that. So now we have to worry because this rune can see the torpedoes. They probably weren't going to hit anyway. I probably didn't need to pop smoke either, but, you know, we did. So we will just deal with the fact that we popped the smoke, and we're going to, again, try and burn him down with the guns. And 164,000 damage. We are well beyond the server stat averages here. And I feel obligated to point out, you know, this battle is uncommon. This much damage is uncommon. But what isn't uncommon is this, you know, a good number of torpedo hits, a good number of fires. It's entirely possible to do well in this ship. In fact, if you were to go look at, like, for instance, my gearing stats and my Shimakaze stats, you will see that I actually perform better in Shimakaze than I do in gearing, in spite of all of the supposed advantages of gearing. I find Shimakaze to be far more enjoyable to play. You can see here I'm using the guns out in open waters quite easily, quite handily. We're starting fires with them. We're doing damage with them. This is where I'm talking about, like, he's distracted, and even if he does shoot at me, there's enough time for me to react and minimize the amount of damage that I'm going to take. And people in this situation would be waiting to line up torpedoes like, I can get closer to him. Let's get closer to this rune, and let's see if we can't, you know, get some torpedoes off on him. Why? Look at how much damage I'm doing just from the fires that I've started. At this point, he's coming towards me. Got high caliber. Woo! He's going to come towards me, and I'm going to wiggle and get away. And he's repaired those fires. So now I'm even more committed to the fact that, you know, if I can get a fire on him again, that will be awesome. So he's doing some damage to me. You know, it's pretty good damage. I'm not going to lie. It's dangerous, but, you know, it's not that dangerous. Gonna get some more hits in here. Another incapacitation. We took out his torpedoes. Take that, Rune. 182,000 damage. Oh, took another hit. I probably should be backing off here. But, screw it. We're so close to the end of the match. If I die, it doesn't really matter. I've done pretty good. Trying to get away a little bit here. Get out of his range. One last little parting shot. At least for now. Go ahead and we're going to turn back now. So, okay. Yeah, we can start turning back. And at this point, this rune is damaged enough that I'm really not worried about it. You can see how I was using the guns at long range to harass him with long-range gunfire. You have comparable shell velocity to Khabarovsk, and the damage is pretty comparable. The reload is lower, obviously. But, okay, so we go ahead and we engage again. And the goal here, maybe we can get him killed. We got 33 seconds. We're just popping off rounds like crazy. Are we going to get the kill? Oh, 594 damage. No, I need more. No damage. Oh, it was 297. He's got 300. Oh, and the game ends. All right, well, that was a hard-fought victory. You can see I used the ship to really punish people. 184,123 damage, 3 kills, 9 torpedo hits, 6 fires, dev strike, high caliber, 2,828 base XP. There is the damage from fires and floods. Pay attention to that. Fires did 21,000 damage. Floods did 8,000. There's the credit screen. Anyway, I hope this really helps you guys figure out what Shimakaze and how to play her. I'm going to get that video up for the torpedoes so it becomes a little bit clearer what I'm talking about with situational awareness. Just be patient with me. Sometime out this week, I promise. Anyway, I'm your Peacekeeper. Like, comment, subscribe, and thank you for watching.